Try to envision a world where your child or a child close to you goes to school every day and they gradually start to come home losing their ability to imagine or to think outside of their normal constraints. This may seem far-fetched, but many of our politicians and our school administrators would have fine arts education reduced or even removed from our schools, which would lead to exactly this. You may not have put much thought into the level of fine arts education that our children are receiving, but these programs have been cut for years, and this has seen a boom recently with the passing of No Child Left Behind legislation in 2001. I have always believed in the importance of fine arts, but it was not until college that I personally learned of the importance that fine arts education has in a child's development and ability in school. The fine arts are integral to education and development of all children and adolescents and should be supported in our schools and homes. However, regardless of its importance, fine arts education is still being slashed from school systems across our country, and both our school administrators and elected officials have the power to push these programs if we make our opinions known. Fine arts such as music, visual art, drama, and dance are being cut at a dramatic rate in our country. Through state and local budget restraints and the passing of No Child Left Behind, the classes have been cut. And even though arts have been diminishing in education for years, it was not until the recent years that the nationwide push to improve math, science, and reading, that this has led to many school districts to dig even deeper and cut these programs at an alarming rate. In Ellen DeLisio's article, Keeping Art Alive Under No Child Left Behind, she states that the Center for Education has reported that the majority of school leaders are reporting achievement gains under No Child Left Behind. But 71% of these same school districts are reporting the cutting of spent time in at least one other subject area, such as fine arts, to achieve these test results. The No Child Left Behind Act of 2001 states in Subpart 15, Section 551, that part of the purpose of the legislation is to support systemic education reform by strengthening arts education. But the fact is that the previous subparts cover areas such as reading, math, science, civics, then education technology, ready-to-learn television, informed consent as it applies to abortion, and many other provisions that are to be implemented before arts education is even touched upon. Many of these provisions may be important, but arts is being put aside to improve in areas that are perceived to be far more important. Research has proven fine arts are integral to child development. According to the article, Fine Arts Change the Brain, researchers at the Johns Hopkins Institute recently studied the effects of music on the brain of children and found that students who attended a 30-minute music lesson once a week and had private lessons once daily for 10 minutes had significant structural changes in their brain and performed better on tests requiring finger dexterity. And while their research did not specifically show an improvement in the area of math, they did prove a dramatic increase in the child's ability to focus and pay attention, which led to overall better scores in all areas, including math, science, and reading. So why are we not pushing the fine arts? Fine arts are a tool that should be utilized to improve test scores to national standards. However, they are the first thing to be cut, which leaves the children in our lives with a void in their education the schools are currently failing to fill. So can arts education be successfully brought back into our classrooms? Yes, it can. As responsible adults, we owe it to our children to ensure that their education is the best that they can possibly receive. But in order to do this, we have to make our voices heard. We have the power to influence and possibly even control what is taught in the classrooms in America. According to the Maryland Fine Arts Education website, in the year 2000, the Maryland State Department of Education, which has one of the most progressive arts education areas in the entire union, provided workshops for school systems to help develop local initiatives to improve fine arts education. On their website, they list years of work that was used to improve the level of arts education in their school system, because parents and voters made their voices heard that fine arts education was important in their schools. The parents and voters said, we want fine arts education back. We want it in our schools, and we want it now. As a result of this, the Washington Post reported in 2008 that Maryland school systems were now ranked among the top 5 schools in the entire nation. So what will our education system look like when fine arts are finally phased out? In England, a country which has pushed math and reading while cutting fine arts for years, dating back to the 1800s, many are being awakened to the importance of arts education, but far too late. The BBC's Georgina Kenyon interviewed several individuals, including David Lee, editor of the Jackdaw Art magazine, who states, art education in Britain is an oxymoron because it is so bad. Mr. Lee goes on to speak about how parents know that a child's visual sense develops with his or her verbal sense, but the art education system in the United Kingdom prevents this from continuing. This is the future of the children of America if we do not affect the positive change that is needed in our country's educational system. Because the fact is, the implementation of No Child Left Behind is modeled to match that of the United Kingdom. It is modeled after their educational system, and without change, it will ultimately lead to the fine arts system that they have, where fine arts is only an optional after-school program. We can make a difference and bring about the change that is needed in our schools. We have the responsibility to make the difference, to make sure that the children of America do not follow the same model as the United Kingdom, which is degenerating because of the lack of arts education. If you are not sure if your child or the child that is in your life is receiving the proper fine arts education, speak to their teacher. If you don't get the response you are happy about, go to their principal. Go to their superintendent. Go to the director of schools. Go to whoever it takes to get the positive change that is needed. And if no one speaks their concern, the school board will do exactly whatever it takes that they feel necessary to comply with the federal standards that they are required to meet to get federal funding, which historically has led to the absence of fine arts in our classrooms. Making your voice heard does not stop in the school systems. The No Child Left Behind Act of 2001 puts educational control in the hands of our federal government. Currently, there is no provision under the U.S. Department of Education's strategic plan for fiscal years 2007 through 2012 to enact any provisions pertaining to fine arts. If we want fine arts education, we need to let Washington, D.C. know. Our elected officials wrote and enacted the legislation that is affecting our education system right now, and they can change it. But we have to let them know that we want it changed. You can contact your representatives to make it clear that you want your children and the children of your children to have a fine arts education, to have the proper education so that they can develop into the people that they need to be in this country. Fine arts education is important to the development of America's children, but it will continue to be cut unless we take the initiative to contact our schools and our elected representatives. If our nation's educational system is not reformed, a generation without the ability to imagine or be creative is much nearer than it may appear, and we must act before it is too late.